point. I want to ask you about Nico Yamaleva because for those that haven't maybe listened to the program since its inception, which was way back in June, one of the things you and I talked about early is how he had improved not only as a prospect, but just how he improved from specifically his junior year to some tape that you saw him and did maybe saw him at the Manning Academy. Correct me if I'm wrong, and just your thoughts on him in general, how he's gotten better now that he's on campus over the past year.
Well, I noticed some just from the underclassmen tape, junior tape to this past year. You could see a little improvement in some of his technique, and I think he's worked with a quarterback coach and spent a little extra time on working footwork and things like that. And I thought, he did a little bit better. It's that's not that's normal, right? I mean, you should get better the more you do something, the better you get. So it's not like a breaking news thing. I mean, it's a good thing. He's dealt with some injuries, been a little bit of a setbacks at times, but he's progressing, and I thought he did a really nice job. The guy's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of charisma, a lot of what I would call potential leadership characteristics. I think the fact that he's kind of embraced the program, the city, the university, and kind of taking the bull by the horns on helping to recruit other guys. I mean, all those things are good leadership signs. Um, so I think it's all positive in terms of his physical and I think intangibles.
One of the things I want to ask specifically, it just seems like the ball pops out of his hand um, really well. Just that arm strength. I know that's one of the things you said you wanted to see. One of the things you like to see actually in person. But what have you been able to garner from that?
Yeah, no, the ball does have a nice pop come out of the hand. It does explode, which is something you can't teach. It's not the most important thing. It's not everything, but boy, when you have it, it's a tool in your tool belt that can help you. You see that in the league, just when you look at the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes, the Justin Herberts, they just do things that they make some of the throws even this weekend, and you say, my goodness, there's only but about 3 or 4 guys around that could do that. So when you have and that's just when things break down and you just can create and make a play. He has that type of physical ability with an arm strength to be late or to be improvisational and still get it there in a hurry. Whereas the guys that are some of the greatest that's ever played, they don't have that, but their timing and their anticipation is so good. So, necessity is the motherhood of invention. But when you have that in your arsenal, there are things, quite frankly, some of which you really can't teach that he can do. So, his arm strength is unique, no question.
So we talked about uh, Milton and some of his issues that he's having, and also the fact that Josh Heupel seems to have a lot of, I don't know if confidence in Milton is the word, or belief. He seems to stick with his guy Milton, and so question for you: do you think how big of an impact do you think Nico will have at the very beginning, or do you think Josh Heupel has an affinity for Milton?
Well, speaking of arm strength, Milton is as good as they come. I mean, he's another guy the ball explodes on him. So it's been an accuracy issue with him. I think the reason why Josh has confidence in him is because he sees him in practice. He works with them and he sees them in meetings. So a lot of what he saw in him, and I tell people all the time, I have to remind them that this is the guy that beat out Hendon Hooker prior to last season. So there was enough there in practice to say, this is the guy we're going with to start because he's performed better. That's how you earn the starting job. So they saw a lot in him. Um, Obviously, that went differently, and Hendon Hooker has been great since the early part of last year, and then, of course, this past season. I think that only time's going to tell on how much better Joe has gotten. I mean, we need to see him play more, and I'm just excited to see in the bowl game and what have you to see how he's progressed. I think there is legitimate belief that it certainly from Josh that it's not like, well, he's been here, that's who we're going to go with. It's there's a confidence level in him that he not only can make plays, but he can make the right decisions. And in this offense, like any offense, you've got to know it and understand it. But this is an offense that requires a lot of, repetition, a lot of seeing it, and a lot of reaction. That reaction comes with experience. When people talk about instincts, people think that's instinctive, meaning you're born with it. Well, nobody's born with it. You're maybe born with a gene of calmness or whatever. Everything is instincts are learned. When you become really good at something, you develop an instinctual quality of seeing it and understanding. And I just think that somebody that's been in the program, they're very comfortable with him. They're going to be more comfortable with him than somebody that's just been there for a couple of weeks. Um, Over time, could that change? Could the play of the guy that's earned it? I mean, all those things factor in. So you never know. And people always laugh when people say, "Well, they should have started him, Hendon Hooker, at the beginning of last year." Well, based on what? You know, sometimes you make decisions, and sometimes it's the best thing is when guys don't start and they sit, and when their time comes, they're more ready than they were if they'd have started 3 games ago. You can only base it on what you have. That's practice, games, meetings, and I think with Milton, he's got more of that than really anybody else, and that's why they're more comfortable with him. Whether that's going to continue or not, obviously we don't know. We'll find that out.
Chris Landry's appearance from LandryFootball.com, and you have to go to that website to learn more about football, is brought to you in part by Zach England. Zach's got your back, best personal injury attorney in Chattanooga. Don't let the insurance companies do you wrong, and they'll try with their big-time lawyers. Zach can match them tit for tat. So Zach's got your back. Zach England of Best and Brock. Chris, have you ever found yourself in a position, because Caleb brought up something before we had you on, that maybe Josh Heupel just really likes Joe Milton for whatever reason? Have you ever found yourself in a position where you've kind of questioned yourself as a coach? Like maybe I'm too loyal to this guy for whatever reason. I got to know his family, whatever the case may be. Have you ever found yourself in that position where you kind of had to look at yourself and say, am I making the right call here?
Oh, sure. In fact, it's one of the things that um, I learned, particularly when I transitioned into scouting in personnel. Having done both it's different. It's a different discipline. And one of the things I learned early on in scouting was to not get close to players. Meaning, it's not that I don't like them or anything, but I don't want to have that relationship of I want to have that cold. This guy is the best. Um, Guys that are easier to coach. Coaches tend to like them more. Guys that maybe have more potential, but they're harder to coach. It's more taxing. Anyone can relate to that. If something's easy, it's yeah, there we go. If it's harder to do, oh boy, this again. But that's why sometimes it can be difficult. Again, though, I don't think it's he liked Joe Milton more than he likes this guy. He certainly didn't like Joe Milton more than he liked Hendon Hooker as a person. It's just the reason why coaches, as a rule, like guys that have been in the system is just what I just said. They've been in the system. They've worked with them more. The more you work with them, the more you develop a relationship. The more you've taught them, the more they learn and understand. It's like anybody running a business, if you've got a person that is your right-hand man or lady that has been in the business for a while and they know how things are done, then there's a new person that's brought in. There's a belief that that person's really good or you wouldn't have hired him, but there's a learning curve that they don't know how we do that. What does that mean? And then, so it's not the innate, the mom is nicer to me or the dad's nicer to me or I like them more, or I like the kid more. That's not a factor. What's a factor is just once you're in the system, you have a belief in them that look, they've been there, they know what to expect, and that's what Joe Milton has that others don't have at this point. It doesn't make them better, and it doesn't mean that's the way it's going to end up. But for right now, that's all you have to go on.
So, Chris, you having worked with the Oilers, you, I would say, were involved in the gold standard of a guy with a big arm and turning him into an NFL quarterback, in Steve McNair, who had the prettiest deep ball I still to this day think I'd ever seen. What are some of the things you guys had to tweak with him, and do some of those things apply to a quarterback like Joe Milton that may need to work on some of his accuracy issues, and are they and could they be similar in that way?
Well, Steve had come from an offense at Alcorn where he was never under center. It was oversimplified, meaning basically it was a shotgun, roll right or roll left, and guys, it wasn't a design route. Guys just worked to get open, and it was just very go out there and make a play. Some might call it schoolyard pickup football. So he had to really learn a system. First thing we had to do is teach him how to take a snap under center, because we were going to be an under center team. We'd run some shotgun. So what we did, first thing we did is we didn't start him, because that puts practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. So if you put a guy in and he's not ready, all he's going to do is resort to what he knows and not what you're trying to teach him. And you're just ingraining bad habits. So the first thing we did is we had a veteran quarterback that we had signed, Chris Chandler, and then after him, after a year, Dave Craig. Dave was more of a true backup as we had begun to integrate Steve. So Steve got to play in the last quarter of the first season, but it's the practices one on top of another. People think practice is practice. Practice is just something people hear, and they don't realize that if you practice in every day from training camp, August, September, October, November. By the time you get to November, you've got one practice stacked up against another, stacked up against another, and another, and another, and another, and another, and another. Those things you become a little better. And then what we had to do is kind of tailor game plan a little bit more. Obviously, he was very effective out of the shotgun in short yardage and goal line as a running quarterback draw. So we did a lot of that. We moved the pocket more. So we designed things that he would be more comfortable with while trying to teach him things that are staples that any quarterback needs to learn. I think in today's game, what you're seeing is more of the athletic traits of a quarterback being utilized at high school and at college. So I think that, you can adjust a little quicker from high school to college, and certainly from college to the NFL, more than in the past. Now, it depends upon your team around you, too. If you go to a bad team, in college or NFL, you're going to have a harder time having success because you don't have the support around you. Guys are not helping you to make plays, even if you got a play to be made. So I think what's going to happen with Nico is, what's really important for the team and for the locker room in general, players are smart. A quarterback has to come in and win the team. If you're like, well, you come in, you're going to start, and a lot of things are said in recruiting, usually what is said is you're going to have an opportunity to start. And you've got to win the team. And the only way you win the team is when you get in that huddle as a quarterback. I'm talking. You get in that huddle, everybody needs to buy in. And the only way they're going to buy in is if you know how to call a play, how to execute a play. If they don't believe you can do it, you can say all you want and, all this bravado. They see right through that. So it's something that has to be earned, not for just earn's sake. Once you prove that you can lead this team and you know the offense better than anybody else on the field, that's when they're going to follow you. So how long does it take for that? Depends on the individual. Depends on who's coaching them. Depends on who's learning, what's their learning curve, how difficult the system is, the players around him, how quickly they're able to assimilate. It's not a one-size-fit-all. It's going to take this amount of time. It will depend on all those variables. So I think which you just going to have to see how he progresses, getting in early, and then we'll see where they are. The other thing is, as a coach, is what's going to give us our best chance to win. And so I think that's where, maybe a certain guy with experience is going to get the first start. But if he doesn't play well, then maybe you tend to go with the younger guy and say, well, we'll ride with him now.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Amanda. Excuse me.
Sorry. Coach Landry, looking at Tennessee right now, looking at put yourself in Josh Heupel's shoes. You have a lot of decisions to make, obviously, about quarterback. Transfer portal, do you go after somebody there? Nico, Joe Milton, Taven Jackson. What would you do as a coach, just looking at outside in? What would you do as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, I mean, I would want to look at a possibility of the right. I don't want to just go get somebody in the transfer portal. There's going to be a specific guy that I'm going to want, not just one, but it could be a type of guy, and it might be one guy, two guys, three guys, and I'd try to recruit those guys because I want to have depth. I don't want to have in any system, but particularly in this system, to have a quarterback that underperforms or gets injured, and I've got to rush a guy that's not ready. You talking about a season that could go really bad. I mean, that could go 6-6 and look like Florida, this year, next year for Tennessee if you don't have good quarterback play. So I'd want to have some insurance. I'd want to have a guy that has got enough experience that I can come in and he can, with not as many reps, be able to run this offense. Okay. And so having somebody in the mix and getting Joe Milton is ready and then getting Nico, those are all things you've got to work simultaneously. Now, how much reps do you give to each? Depends upon how the players progress. So, I mean, I think that there's a reason why they signed Nico. There's a reason why they believe in him. But when is he going to be ready to take over? Heck, you don't know. They don't know. It's not like, yes, come in. It's not like, go to the doctor and you take these antibiotics for 2 weeks and you're good. It doesn't work that way in coaching. It's like you come in and we're going to spend a certain amount of time with him and then he's going to be good to go. Then you don't know. It's a day by day. You work him hard and he might end up being the guy day one next year. He may not even play next year. Mm-hmm. It depends upon how he performs, how he develops, how Milton plays. The guy that's going to be the best, that's going to perform the best, and that's just not just physically, but the understanding is going to win it. So to me, you want to, at this stage, you want to put enough pieces in there, and then you work them from a coaching standpoint and give them certain amount of reps in certain situations. You can, in the offseason program, there are things you can do and work. And just to me, it's not as difficult as people make it out to be because the cream rises to the top. I mean, the player that performs the best and earns it, that's the one you have the most trust in. And so it's like, it's kind of like evaluating players. People say, well, you evaluate this. A player evaluates himself, how he plays and what his skill sets are. You just got to know what to look for. And as a coach, you've got to teach them. You got to work them hard, and you got to push them. And who's going to respond to that? Sometimes younger guys, it takes them a while to get to the adjusting to the college way of coaching and learning, and got a lot of other things going on campus, and just a lot of things that kind of retards their development of getting there. And then I've had cases where a guy just comes in really, really quickly. So I think you got to put the pieces in place. You got to have options. You got to have insurance policies, so to speak, and then you got to coach them hard, and then it'll play its way out.
Chris's appearance is brought to you in part by Vassy Lawn and Garden. Man alive, it's worth the drive there in Cleveland. I don't care if you're coming from Nashville, Knoxville, or Chattanooga. Cleveland, Tennessee is the home of your industrial mowers that you need, your commercial mowers, and they're able to buy in quantity so you can save money with your business. Also, residential mowers, they have that as well. Vassy Lawn and Garden. Man alive, it's worth the drive. How many days? Because we like to sit back in the media and say, oh, they're going to announce it on Friday or the second week of camp or whenever. How many days do you typically know before you make it public that that's probably the guy?
Oh, I mean, when you announce it, or when you actually know when he's the guy? Because I think it's a yeah. Because I think it's again a gradual process. You begin to see this guy's a little bit better at this, but then as the further you got more work to do in terms of practices, you see guys regress, you see guys come on. And so there's a point where you start to get a feel for who the guy is. It's rarely, it's not like it's rarely okay, we're going to announce it Monday at noon, that Sunday night you're going, oh, is it A or B? B, A. It's football, and it's you pretty much it's trending one way. So you pretty much know. Normally I think it depends on there are different ways to when you announce it. So if you feel like the team kind of needs to know it, and I think by reps. So like if you have a feel for this is going to be the guy, and it's it's into fall practice, then you want to get the guy, or whenever the situation is, practice wise, you start to basically give the guy reps, because you can be the guy and pick a guy. If you don't get the reps in practice, it doesn't really matter. You're not going to be as prepared. It's kind of like you can be smart in class, but if you don't go to the lectures and know what the topic is, you're not going to do as well on the test. So that's kind of what practice is all about. You pretty much know, and you work it with reps. But sometimes what you do is when it's really close, you'll give first team reps to this one, and the next day first team reps to that one, and then you see how it plays out. From that point on, when do you announce it? I don't know. I mean, it kind of depends. If you feel like the team is going to be better to know, or if you feel like you share it with the team and you don't want to share it with the media, sometimes you just announce it whenever. I never really worried about when it announced. I worried about how was the team buying into whoever it's going to be, but to me, it's never usually as big of a surprise as people think. I thought it was interesting this year that, and I thought it was unique, and I thought it was good. And you can do this in college when you have the right schedule and you don't have to play a big opponent. But to see what Jim Harbaugh did this year, he had two quarterbacks. I'm going to start player A in this game, and I start player B in this game. Just give them both a chance. It was close enough. I think in today's world, the way I did it might be a little bit different, because today, to answer your question, you might delay the announcement, because if you've got a guy that you really like, but he's not going to win the job, the sooner you announce it, the greater the chance that he might have to say, you know what, I'm going somewhere else. And you don't want guys to leave and transfer if they've got time to do it, and then all of a sudden you turn around and 2 games into it you got an injury. Well, at Michigan, just an example, their guy is left now, the backup, but imagine if they had to go through a situation where there was an injury, a significant injury, and then you don't have your backup. That's what coaches fear today more than ever.